He laughed the night he told me he was leaving. Can you imagine that? The man I once trusted more than my own heartbeat looked me straight in the eyes, smiled, and told me our story was over. And the worst part, one was carrying his child when those words broke me. This isn't a tragedy out of some novel. This was New York City, 2022. The streets outside our glass apartment windows never slept. Horns screaming, people rushing, neon lights burning into the night. And there I was, 28, successful in my own quiet way as a freelance illustrator, standing in the ruins of a life I thought we built together. Ethan Mercer. God, even his name still stings when it rolls off my tongue. He was everything I wasn't: powerful, magnetic, the kind of man who walked into a room and owned it. Corporate boardrooms bent to him. Investors trusted him. Strangers turned to look twice. And me, I was the man behind him, sketching in the quiet, cooking dinner, waiting for him to come home late from endless meetings. I was the man who believed in forever, and then forever laughed in my face. I can't do this anymore, he said that night, shrugging out of his tailored jacket like he was just shedding another deal gone wrong. I'm in love with someone else. The room spun. My stomach knotted, not just from the morning sickness that had haunted me for weeks, but from the knife twisting in my chest. Someone else. I pressed my palm against my belly, as if shielding the tiny heartbeat I'd just begun to hear at doctors' visits. You're serious? My voice cracked, more fragile than I wanted. Ethan didn't look away, but his eyes were steel. I never asked you to, he stopped, words choking, then shook his head. This isn't the life I want. And just like that, the man I loved, the man whose hands had once traced every scar of mine as if they were constellations, walked out into the rain. The weeks that followed were brutal. Loneliness was louder than the city noise outside. Bills piled up because Ethan's shared account vanished overnight. My friends tried to reach me, but what could they say? It'll be okay. It wasn't okay. I was pregnant, abandoned, and too damn proud to beg for the man who shattered me to come back. Nights stretched long. I drew until my fingers cramped, sketching Ethan's face over and over, sometimes twisted in anger, sometimes soft with love, sometimes blurred until he was nothing but a smudge. I hated him. I loved him. I hated that I loved him. And then came Michael. He wasn't Ethan. Not by a long shot. Michael was quieter, softer, the owner of the corner cafe where I'd escape for hours just to breathe in the smell of coffee and not feel alone. He had curly blonde hair that caught the sunlight, an easy laugh that cracked my walls, and a way of looking at me that made me feel like maybe, just maybe, I wasn't broken beyond repair. You always order the same thing, he teased one afternoon, sliding a steaming cup toward me. Black coffee, 2 sugars. You're a creature of habit. Maybe habits are all I have left, I muttered, staring at the swirling steam. Michael leaned on the counter, eyes gentle. Or maybe you just need new ones. I didn't mean to tell him. I didn't mean to let it spill out between us, the truth about Ethan, about the betrayal, about the life inside me I was terrified to face alone. But something in Michael's presence cracked me wide open, and before I knew it, he was standing across from me, not with pity, but with something far rarer. Understanding. Whoever he is, he's a fool, Michael said softly, his hand brushing mine in the quietest, most grounding touch. And you're stronger than you think. For the first time in weeks. I believed it. But life wasn't done with me. It never is when you think you've hit rock bottom. Ethan reappeared 3 months later. Not at the apartment sold that, leaving me scrambling for rent but at my doctor's office. His shadow filled the doorway, his eyes wide when they landed on the ultrasound in my hands. His voice broke. I turned away, clutching the picture to my chest. You don't get to call him yours. Please, Alex, Ethan whispered, stepping closer, his usual armor stripped bare. I didn't know you'd go through with it. The fury that burned through me could have lit the entire city. Go through with it. I spun on him, tears streaking my face. This isn't a business deal, Ethan. This is a life. Our life. And you left us. For once. He had no comeback. No slick words. No smug smile. Just silence. And in that silence, I realized something. I didn't need him anymore. I wanted to hate him forever. To erase the years we shared. But hate is just another form of love that refuses to die. And when I looked at him, broken and desperate, I knew the war inside me was far from over. Because part of me still loved him. I thought walking away from Ethan would be the end of it. But in New York, ghosts don't fade quietly. They follow you down crowded streets, whisper in the rustle of subway trains, linger in the rain-slick reflections of old memories. Ethan was everywhere I turned. No matter how hard I tried to shut the door on him. He started small. Flowers at my doorstep. Emails asking if I was eating well. Calls at midnight that I refused to answer. Then, he showed up at Michael's cafe. The bell above the door rang, and the entire air shifted. Michael glanced at me from behind the counter, eyes sharpening when he saw who had walked in. Ethan looked out of place here, polished, pressed. A man used to corner offices and expensive restaurants. He didn't belong among chipped mugs and the warmth of sunlight filtering through lace curtains. I just want to talk, Ethan said, his voice steady but his eyes unsteady. Flicking to my stomach rounder now. Undeniable. Michael crossed his arms, planting himself firmly between us. He doesn't owe you anything. For a moment, I thought Ethan might lash out. Unleash that razor-sharp tongue he used to cut through boardroom battles. But he didn't. He just stood there, shoulders slumping, the weight of something I couldn't name dragging him down. Please, Alex, he said quietly, let me make this right. I wanted to laugh, or scream, or throw the mug in my hands against the wall just to shatter something the way he shattered me. Instead, I whispered the truth I'd been swallowing for months. You can't make abandonment right. But Ethan didn't disappear this time. He lingered. He offered to pay rent, to cover medical bills, to sit in the waiting room during checkups. At first, I refused everything. Pride was all I had left. But the nights grew longer, the weight heavier, and Michael's kindness, though steady, couldn't erase the reality that I was alone in this fight. So slowly, against my will, I let Ethan back in. Not into my heart, but into the edges of my life. He drove me to appointments. He stocked my fridge. He asked questions about the baby, his eyes softening every time the monitor caught the sound of that tiny heartbeat. And damn it all, I saw glimpses of the man I once loved. The man who whispered promises against my skin at midnight. The man who swore forever. But then, I would remember. The laughter in his voice the night he left. The emptiness of the bed when he didn't come home. The image of myself standing alone in the rain, holding a secret I hadn't been ready to share. Love doesn't vanish. But trust. Once it's broken, the shards in your hands you bleed no matter how tightly you try to hold on. Michael noticed the shift. He didn't say much at first, just gave me space. Always with that gentle smile that had become my anchor. But one evening, as he walked me home, he finally spoke. "You still love him," he said. Not as an accusation, but as a truth laid bare. I froze. The city buzzing around us. "I don't know what I feel anymore." Michael's hand brushed mine. "You don't have to choose right now. But don't let him back in just because you're afraid of being alone. You deserve more than scraps of love. Alex, you deserve someone who stays." His words sank deep, threading through every fear I carried. And yet, when Ethan showed up at my apartment one stormy night, drenched and desperate, whispering, "I never stopped loving you," my chest cracked open all over again. The final act of our story came in the delivery room. Hours of pain, sweat, and fear blurred together. I remember Michael's hand gripping mine, steady as always. I remember Ethan's voice trembling as he begged the doctor for updates. And then Finalia cry, a sound that split the world in two. A boy. Our boy. They placed him in my arms. And in that instant, nothing else mattered. Not betrayal. Not heartbreak. Not the years of love and loss tangled between us. Only him. Only the fragile miracle staring at me with eyes too wide for this world. I looked up, and both men were there. Michael, tears streaming freely. Ethan, broken open in a way I had never seen. His hand trembling as he reached out but stopped short, as if he didn't deserve to touch. For the first time, I realized this wasn't just my story anymore. It was his too, the tiny life who had no say in the storms we created. The weeks after were a blur of sleepless nights. Lullabies whispered into the dark, and bottles lined up like tiny soldiers on the counter. Ethan came often, awkward at first, but learning how to hold, how to soothe, how to be more than the man who left. Michael was there too, steady as the sunrise, showing up with meals, with laughter, with quiet company when I thought I would drown in exhaustion. And me, I was caught between them, between the man who once destroyed me and the man who was helping piece me back together. But the truth is, love doesn't always come with clean lines and easy choices. Sometimes, it's messy. Sometimes, it's forgiving. Sometimes, it's letting go. One night, as I rocked my son to sleep, Ethan stood at the doorway, shadows softening the sharpness of his features. "I'll never forgive myself," he whispered. I met his gaze. "And I may never forgive you either. But he deserves a father. So if you're staying, stay. Not for me, for him." And for once, Ethan didn't argue. He just nodded, tears glinting in the dark. Later, when Michael walked me home from the park, he smiled faintly. "Looks like you've already made your choice." I frowned. "I haven't. You have," he said gently. "And it's okay. He's the father of your child. Maybe he'll never be the partner you deserved. But he's trying. And that counts for something." I wanted to protest, to beg him to stay anyway. But when I looked at Michael, I saw not loss, But Grace. He wasn't walking away because I wasn't enough. He was walking away because he wanted me to be whole, even if it wasn't with him. And that kind of love, that's the rarest kind. Months later, as spring painted the city in soft gold, I stood on the rooftop of my building, my son cradled in my arms. Ethan stood beside me, not as the flawless man I once idolized, but as someone flawed, someone broken, someone human. We weren't what we used to be. Maybe we never would be again. But as my son's tiny fingers curled around mine, I realized I wasn't alone anymore. Not in the storms. Not in the silence. Not in the future waiting to unfold. Because love, in the end, isn't about perfection. It's about choosing again and again to stay. Even when it's hard. Even when it hurts. Even when the scars never fully fade. And as the city lights flickered below us, I whispered to my son the only truth that mattered. We survived. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay updated with the latest videos.